Has it been a labor of love for you because you are from the place and you have also written poems about Nalanda?
So I thought it's my duty to tell this great story of Nalanda to everyone, because even in Nalanda nobody knows about these things.
And what do you think is the key element that distinguished Nalanda from other contemporary monasteries of the time?
Nalanda has a sacred geography. It is very close to Rajgirh, Bodh Gaya and Patna, Patliputra. Many people, like even Mahavira chose to have his parinirvana next, very close to Nalanda in Bhavapuri. You can say that scientific inquiry starts with Buddhism itself, because in Buddhism, Buddha's own Pratitya Samutpada, the theory of or doctrine of dependent origination, which itself, says that nothing in this world can exist independently. Everything, therefore, nothing has been created. Aryabhat is the first person to assign 0 as a digit, and Aryabhat is a scholar at Nalanda. And we should be thankful to both Aryabhat for developing that concept, and Brahmagupta for making it as a number and devising the rules.
You attribute the origins of great Western universities like Oxford and Cambridge to the system that was developed in Nalanda.
So in Nalanda, what happens that you have the standardization of the architectural plan of a vihara, Buddhist vihara.
Despite all the renewed interest in the legacy of Nalanda, the fact remains that only 10% of Nalanda has been excavated. So do we need to re-energize our efforts?
Of course. And how do we re-energize? So first of all, we have to know what was Nalanda. So this is a book which tells the complete story of Nalanda.
Hello and welcome to NL Interviews. These days we hear a lot about global centers of excellence, global centers of learning, but in the ancient world, there were glorious predecessors of these great centers of learning, and one of them was the Nalanda University, which has far been fading away in historical amnesia, but last few years there have been efforts to retrieve it in the historical narratives and the cultural landscape of the ancient world. And a person who has turned his historical gaze and done it with very poetic sensibility is a diplomat, and particularly as a son of soil of Nalanda, the Nalanda University. Welcome to our show, Mr. Abhay K.
Thank you so much.
Here we are to discuss his latest book, Nalanda. How it changed the world, how it changed how it influenced the big ideas of the ancient world, be it in science, mathematics, philosophy, and how it was a lighthouse of knowledge system.
People often talk about the decline and destruction of Nalanda, but the idea of Nalanda never died. Idea continued to flourish, and many Nalandas were founded across the world actually. And way back in 16th century, Phenpo Nalendra was founded in Tibet, which was a reconstruction of Nalanda in Tibet. And gradually, you see now across the world institutions named after Nalanda.
You talk about the contribution of Aryabhat, who placed 0 as a digit, which completely changed the world of calculations and the mathematical imagination of the world. So how do you look at the teaching of multidisciplines?
You have the first person, Aryabhat, as the first person to assign 0 as a digit. And Aryabhat is a scholar at Nalanda. He's obviously in touch with the Madhyamaka philosophy and Sunyavad, what is happening in the Buddhist philosophy. And he's then using 0 as a digit, then his work is then further improved. Not only he does zero, but he also does sine functions. He calculates the value of pi up to 4 decimal points. He also proves that Earth is actually moving, on its axis, because he realizes that the constellations, which are static, they seem to, move. While he gives the example of when you are in a boat in a river, the river bank seems to be moving, but actually it's not the river banks, but the boat is moving.
So what would be a typical day of a scholar or a student in Nalanda?
Very high level of discipline. In fact, the Chinese scholar Itzing writes that Nalanda, of all the monasteries, has more strict discipline than others. And in the whole history of Nalanda, there has not been a case of a single dispute or rebellion. So see, intellectual life, here he writes, the priests, Xuanzang writes in his book, the priests, to the number of several thousands, are the men of highest ability and talent. Their distinction is great at the present time, and there are many hundreds whose fame has rapidly spread through distant regions. Their conduct is pure and unblameable. They sincerely follow the precepts of moral law. The rules of the convent are severe, and all the priests are bound, or monks are bound, to observe them. His biographer, Hui Li, he says within the temple they arrange 100 pulpits for preaching, and the students attend these discourses without any fail, even for a minute. So you see the 100 lectures being organized every day.
These two travelers, particularly Ansang and Easing, they lived for longer duration of time.
Yes.
Also, they carried with them a lot of text and copied a lot of. So, when they went back to China, how did they reroute this knowledge?
So you can see that Xuanzang, when he went back to China, he carried 657 texts with him. And these texts were not only Mahayana sutras, but also it was the sutras of other Buddhist sects like Asthavira Vada sutras and Mahasanghikas and Mahisasakas and others, and also Hetu Vidya or Sravasti Vadan treatises or works of grammar. And when he returned to China, he presented all these to the Tang Emperor and set up a bureau of translation and started translating these texts into Mandarin, because his main goal to come to Nalanda, was to he wanted to have the complete version of the Yogacara Bhumi Sutra. In the same way, Itzing also carried 400 Sanskrit texts from Nalanda.
The day of massacre at Nalanda, in a very poetic terms, Abhay writes, and I quote the last few lines, that the light of the world is fading today to face the ravages of time alone, abandoned, scorned, forgotten, or perhaps to be reborn into many Nalandas. So this is from a poem that he wrote, The Day of Massacre at Nalanda. So this the physical form of Nalanda didn't survive this plunder that went on even in the next century.
Persian historian Minhaj, he has written that as per the eyewitness accounts, he meets these two raiders who participated in the raids in Udantapuri. They tell him, that how viciously, what was the how he went to the gate of the fort of Bihar, Udantapur, with only 200 horses and began the war by taking the enemy unawares. Muhammad Bakhtiar, with great vigor and audacity, rushed in at the gates of the fort and gained possession of the place. Great plunder fell into the hands of the victors. Most of the inhabitants of the place were Brahmins with shaven heads. They were put to death. Large number of books were found there, and when the Mohammedans saw them, they called for some person to explain their contents, but all the men had been killed. It was discovered that the whole fort and city was a place of study, madrasa. These are the words of Minhaj, and he writes in his book Tabakat-e-Nasiri.
There was one more A massive raid into 1235.
Yes. So Dharma Swami writes, in 1235 CE, Nalanda was again attacked by the Turuskas of Udantapuri. Jayadev was arrested and put in prison by them when he learned about their plan to raid Nalanda again. So you see here is a successive raids happening because Nalanda was too large to be destroyed in one raid or two raids or even 10 raids. It would take decades to destroy Nalanda.
How do you view the present state of the newly established university in Nalanda?
The efforts to revive the idea of Nalanda has been going on for a while. In 1951, for example, Nav Nalanda Mahavihara was founded by close to the ruins of Nalanda Mahavihara by it's attributed to the first president of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, to revive the glory of ancient Nalanda Mahavihara as a center of higher learning in Pali and Buddhism. After that, you also have attempts like, to near Nalanda Open University was established in 1987. So the idea has been, for revival has been in pipeline since a long time. And it was in 2006 in the Bihar Legislative Assembly that Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the former president of India, he proposed the revival of the ancient Nalanda Mahavihara once again. And so that took, an act of parliament. Nalanda University Act 2010 was passed by both houses of the parliament. And it was in September 2014 that the university started functioning. And it was again in, new campus was built over the years, and it was inaugurated last year by the Honorable Prime Minister in June.
Idea of university, and you have talked about the 9-story library system that it had. Just briefly tell us about its library system.
Right. So Nalanda had a library which was named at, it had a sutra library. Those times there were sutras, and these were the manuscripts written on the palm leaves. And you can in fact see some of these sutras at the National Museum. Here in Delhi. And so Nalanda's this sutra library had 3 wings. The whole library was known as Dharma Ganja, but the 3 parts were known as Ratna Sagar, Ratna Dadhi, and Ratna Ranjaka. So these library had the sutras collections for which all these monks came, mainly attracted to Nalanda, that they will find the complete and authentic sutras at Nalanda if they can't find it anywhere else in the world. So that's why Swensang came. He wanted to have this Yogacara Bhumi sutra, and he copied them at Nalanda. Nalanda also, so this sutra library had expert copiers. There's a village nearby Nalanda called it's Ghosi, and Ghosi supposed to be a village of scribes who would help in copying the sutras, because monks would not all the time will be copying themselves.